Welcome everybody to our, what is it, our third episode of How to Keep the Fights Clean and the Sex Dirty. We're here with Mike and Ashley Bledsoe. Welcome, welcome. And we're going to be talking about how to keep the fights clean as it starts. We're so excited to be here with you. We're actually broadcasting from outside of Paris, France. We're in a place called Durtal at a chateau.
I think they say Durtal.
Yeah, and just so excited to be here with you today. Gabby?
Yeah, welcome everyone, and Ashley and Mike. We're so glad that you can join us. And just to give you a little background in case this is your first show, the show's Fights Clean, Sex Dirty. And today we're going to be talking about how to keep the fights clean. And we're always looking at specifically when can you apply these tips. Is it before the fight starts, as it starts, during the fight when you're in the thick of it, in the heat of it, or is it after? And same thing with Sex Dirty. So today, of course, we jump a little bit all over the place depending on where your questions and the interesting, exciting, fun conversation goes. But today we're going to be starting with how to keep the fights clean as it starts. Are you sharing that screen there?
I am. So just as a little kind of outline of how we organize what we're talking about, we have the fights clean here with the heart with the halo on it. We have the sex dirty with the heart with the devil horns on it.
Yeah, be an angel when it comes to the fights, and go ahead and be a devil when it comes to the bedroom. As I like to say, save being nasty for your sex life.
And then we break our content into 4 kind of time segments: before a fight or sex is beginning, as it starts, right as you're on-ramping in, during, very exciting in either case, and then after. So today we're talking about how to keep the fights clean as it starts. Super exciting content today.
So let me go ahead and introduce Ashley and Mike Bledsoe. You know, entrepreneurs, awesome couple. Mike, they work together a bit, not entirely full-time. I know, Ashley, you're doing other projects as well, and love to hear what you're doing. But Mike and Ashley have a company called Barbell Shrugged. And what's interesting, I was talking to Mike last week, is, you know, they're into fitness and all of that, but he was saying, yeah, we're doing a show on permaculture and sustainability. I was like, really? Interesting. Okay, so they really broadening. It's not just fitness, but how to have a really awesome, wonderful, well-rounded life. And of course, part of that is having an awesome relationship, because your relationship sucks, your life pretty much sucks.
And most of you can probably relate to that.
So welcome, Ashley and Mike. Anything else you want to say in your introduction here?
Well, thanks for having us. I've been wanting to delve into discussions around relationships for a long time, so this is like a good intro for me. I've been doing a lot of stuff in the health and fitness space for a while, and a little bit in the wealth space, and I think it's fun to get into relationships.
Fantastic. Ashley?
Yeah, the same. I'm more interested in the, the female or the wife side of things, kind of as far as being an entrepreneur's wife, and how you can be a team and work together.
Yeah, I like that you're saying team. Raj and I will often say, go, Team Sandra! And it really does take a partnership, whether you're working together, I know you work together some, or whether you're just living together and walking through life together. It really does take a partnership. And you guys are just such a great couple. I know we got to see you a few weeks ago, and I was talking to some friends tonight. You know, we're here for a friend's 50th birthday to celebrate in France. And I was telling them that I was interviewing you and what I admired about the two of you as a couple. And, you know, we had breakfast together a few weekends ago, and then we all went to the same party later that night. And then, Ashley, you left early, and Mike was there. And I was like, you know, I love a couple that they can come and play together, but it's also okay if one wants to go home and the other wants to stay. And then, Mike, you and I, we stayed really late at the party.
Way too late.
That was the latest I've been at a party for a while. And, you know, neither one of us, our partners are like, where are you and what are you doing? And, you know, it's just really great to feel that love and sense of play and connectedness and union, and still spaciousness for our own differences and individuality and preferences, you know, either overall or in the moment.
Yeah, it's been very freeing being able to, once we have the realization that we can go have our own experiences, and then come back and talk about it. We don't have to experience everything together all the time.
Right, right, awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful symbiotic relationship of being like strong and independent on your own and just beautifully intertwined together, but then also being able to contribute to each person's individuality and empower them to even further that. And it's beautiful to see what you guys are doing in your relationship. Okay, Gabby, should we jump into some content on
Absolutely.
how to keep the fights clean as it starts?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, the flow for today, we're doing a little introduction, getting to know Ashley and Mike a little bit and introduce them and the concepts around how we organize the information for this course. And we're going to give you a little distinction now, a tip that Raj and I love to use and apply. And then we'll just see where it goes, and then about halfway through the show, we're going to open it up to you, to the audience, and make it live. So be jotting down your questions. You'll be able to share in the chat. You'll be able to ask questions live, and we'll let you know when that join the live button actually goes live and you can join in. So let's go ahead and get started. The first tip for how to keep the fights clean as it starts. So you're not quite in the fight yet, but the fight is just starting. So we have lots of tips in this area, but the one we wanted to start with to focus on today is called put on the Teflon suit and hold the trash can. You want me to tell about this?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So, you know, often when someone comes to you, or your partner comes to you, I should say specifically, and there's some upset, you know, it might even feel like that upset is directed at you, or they might even be directing that at you. They might even be blaming you. But if you can understand that, whoa, my partner's going through something, you know, you might want to look at what's going on. For us, we know that our biggest cause of an argument is either we're hungry or we've had technology glitches. You know, Mike, you can relate to this, I'm sure. An entrepreneur is traveling all over the world while you're trying to work. You know, especially if they've happened multiple days in a row, those are the two things that cause arguments for us the most. So if you can begin to unhook from what's going on as an interaction with you, and just get, if your partner's in a bit of a meltdown, if you can really hold the container and not get sucked into defensiveness or blame or ping pong or I don't deserve this, and just get, your partner's having a tough time for whatever reason, it can make a total difference. So you know about a Teflon frying pan, right? You know, it's like the egg's just supposed to slip off. So imagine your partner just threw an egg in your face. And you could go, oh my God, you threw an egg in my face. I'm going to throw an egg at you. But instead, you want to say, okay, I'm just going to let that slide right off. And I'm going to be there for my partner so I don't get, it's not about fair or right or wrong. It's about what's going to bring you closer together. We're human beings, we have challenges, we have stresses, we get hooked, we lose our minds. And so how can we actually hold this space where they can share whatever they're sharing? And I just will admit that Raj is way better at this than I am. He's upset, and I go into like, I don't deserve this, you know. Well, life should be good right now. You should be upset. In fact, we've named it, because we like to name our arguments. And what I say is, get it together, damn it, you're ruining it for me. I'm happy over here. I'm happy over here.
Mess with my happiness.
And you got, you know, I don't know, you got some anxiety going on and some stress or whatever it is, and like, ooh, don't get it on me. So if you can put on the Teflon suit, like sometimes we'll literally go from the bottom and pull up, like we're pulling up the zipper of our Teflon suit. Or sometimes I use the metaphor, if you know, you were ever in your college days and maybe one of your friends was like getting sick, you didn't go, oh my God, look at you, you're upset, you know, you're getting sick. You just say, hey, how can I help? You know, you might get him a glass of water, or if it's a girl, you may pull her hair back if she's getting sick. And when your partner's upset, it's a little bit like emotional vomit, you know. And so we say, put on the Teflon suit and hold out that trash can.
Yeah, and yeah, as human beings, we're not really designed to put on the Teflon suit.
Quite the opposite.
We're kind of designed to defend and defend and react and survive. And putting on the Teflon suit, looked at a different way, is just being able to take in what someone says and not unconsciously react to what they're saying, because that's generally what we do. Someone says something, especially if it's not pleasant for us to hear, and we react to it, and then we want to say something in reaction. Putting on the Teflon suit is just being with what your partner is saying and really getting them. because that's all they really need in that moment. They just need to be gotten, and we don't do that. We kind of start putting on the boxing gloves, and we start coming back at them. Like, well, you did this, or like, why are you acting that way? You know, and that's what will start escalating something downward. Downward meaning it will get worse.
Yeah, devolving.
Devolve the argument.
The last episode, we ended up talking a little bit about the imago dialogue, as someone had a question about, you know, what to do when you don't want an issue solved, you just want to be heard. Mm-hmm. And what's pretty miraculous about most arguments is that actually people aren't, it really doesn't matter if you resolve the issue. What really matters is that you're heard. And if your partner and you both feel heard, you end up coming up with creative solutions. It just diffuses things. So part of putting on the Teflon suit is just being able to hear your partner, not react. You know, briefly, I'll give a brief summary of the imago dialogue that, you know, you mirror what they said, you kind of give it back to them. You know, not parroting them, but, you know, saying, using mostly their words, you kind of tell them what you heard them say. Then you ask them, did I get it? You know, and if they say, yeah, you got that right, then you say, is there any more? And you let them go until they're completely done and they've said everything, rather than, I used to do this a lot, Raj would be trying to tell me something and I go, like I was going to jump in. He's like, I'm not finished. So you ask them, should we do the dance? Did I get it? Is there more? Did I get it? Is there more? Did I get it? Is there more?
It's just a way to bring some fun and humor, because generally, you know, when we're upset and we're triggered, we're trying to communicate something when we're triggered. Bringing a little bit of levity to it helps diffuse the intenseness of it. And, you know, if you can provide, not like, you don't want to diminish the experience of the other person. Like if they're upset and you're like, did I get it? Is there more? Like, that's not going to work, because they're going to be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Timing is everything.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes what people need is just to be held, you know, or other times what they need to hear is, like, honey, I really got that. Like, I get how that could make you upset.
But the imago dialogue works so well that I've told clients and friends that are couples before, I've said, if it's not working, you're probably not doing it right and you want to go back to the practice. So again, it's mirroring and making sure you say, did I get it, and is there more? And then the second part is validating. Doesn't mean you agree with them, but you're saying, you're not crazy for thinking that. You're actually saying, I get it. I can see how from your perspective that you might feel that way.
Yeah, and just put yourself in their shoes and try to get it from their perspective rather than trying to sort it out in your perspective.
Now that can be difficult if you're like, that's not true, but the imago dialogue is not the time to be saying that's not true. It's just the whole point. It's not to ping pong, it's not to resolve an issue, it's to actually just get them. And so after the validation, the third part is empathy. That must be really painful. You know, you're just saying to them, like, I feel you. I feel that that's challenging. And so the imago dialogue is a great way to put on the Teflon suit and not get sucked into, well, what does this mean about me? Well, maybe I'm not being a good partner if they're upset, or are they blaming me for their upset? And they might even be blaming you. But if you can be the one who's more resourced and strong, and, you know, we say relationship isn't 50-50, it's actually 100% zero. And both of you being 100% and zero.
Meaning, I totally got this, independent of what the other person's doing. You can't control what the other person does. You can only control yourself.
And if you say, I'll be 50% and you be 50%, that's really setting yourself up for a totally corrupt relationship. Yeah. You've got to be willing to show up regardless of how they're being. So put on the Teflon suit and hold the trash can.
Yeah. I love what you guys have in your lower third there on ninja couple.
Oh, nice. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I like to say that mastering these different distinctions that we're covering in the show, you really can become a ninja with them. It doesn't, you know, they're kind of easy conceptually, but they take practice. You know, I sometimes when this is going on, like Abby's saying something and I'm totally triggered, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a total ninja right now. And I just imagine myself totally grounded, and every part of my body just wants to, like, react, and I'm like, nope, not going to do it. So it's not necessarily easy, but it is simple in concept.
We like to say wonderful is worth it.
So yeah.
Ashley and Mike, anything that we've said about this distinction that resonates for you as a couple, or stories where you brought that in?
Absolutely. I find that like most solutions to these complex problems, like relationships, are counterintuitive in nature. So like the intuitive thing to do and the reactionary thing is like they're yelling at me, I have to yell back. That's like the intuitive thing to do. And like what I've learned in life in general is like I approach things as like, what would be the counterintuitive thing to do here? Well, the counterintuitive thing would be to listen. And what's interesting is like relationships, I always distill things down to business for some reason, is like sales. And what I've learned is people just want to be heard and understood. And until the person feels understood, then they will never listen. Like even if you have a solution to their problem, if Ashley brings a problem to me, and usually she just wants me to listen, she doesn't want a solution at all. Not for me anyway. And so like, but what I've learned is like she just wants to feel understood, and after I make her feel understood and I get her to that point, then I can offer a solution. She's way more open to it. And like the keys to making someone feel understood is repeating back the same words that they used when they're describing the problem. And this is why it reminds me of sales. It's like, yeah, you just listen to the person, whatever they're saying, and even if the terminology they're using isn't spot on, or even if like that's not a word you would use in how you would describe something, repeating back the exact words they use is gonna like create such a level of feeling understood that they haven't had before, and then they're gonna go, wow, this person really gets me, and they're gonna connection is just gonna like really, really come through.
Yeah, we did the same business coach, right? Evan Pagan, who we're having dinner with here tonight.
Exactly how he describes it.
Yeah, and he says you don't even have to talk about the solutions. If you can just describe their problem in a way that really resonates with them, then they just assume you have the solution. Yeah. So by hearing them, you're essentially describing their problem, like giving it back to them. Did I get this?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There was and speaking of like counterintuitive, there was one day, so Ashley will agree, she's a little bit of a hothead. So early in our marriage, she would slam the cabinet doors in our kitchen.
And when I'd get mad, I'd be like, ah, and shut it and slam it and throw it and stomp and all kinds of stuff.
So I would just sit in the other room while she was mad at me.
Yelling at him. Yeah.
She'd yell at me, I'd go. And one day I decided to walk behind her and start slamming the cup, opening and slamming the cupboard behind her. So I was just doing whatever she was doing, and then we burst into laughter, and she couldn't stop laughing. And that was a counterintuitive moment. I was like, what is the last thing I would do right now? I was like, that's the last thing I would do.
Have a slamming cupboard door party. Let's do it.
Jerry Seinfeld, when what's his name? The guy with the glasses. When
George,
he does everything counterintuitive to what you do.
It's like winning at life.
Yeah, awesome. One thing I just wanted to point out is that one of the things we're talking a lot about here is this Imago dialogue or recreating somebody. Gabby mentioned mirroring, validating, empathizing. And I'm just going to quickly show on screen here. You can check out all of our replays at, I'll throw this link into the chat window, but we talked at length about the Imago dialogue in episode 1. 2. Tobin was on episode 1, remember?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you want a little bit more in-depth explanation there, you can go to our episode library.
And while you're on this page, let's just point out that we have some other great people coming: Alex Allman and Antonia Dodge and Joel from Personality Hacker. And just go ahead and take a look there, because we'll keep going through how to keep the fights clean and the sex dirty before, as it starts, during, and after. Again, giving you tips that you can apply at the time and the place where they work most for you.
Fantastic. Okay, great. So do we have another distinction we're covering today?
We sure do, but I want to ask Ashley first. Ashley, anything else you want to add on that one, or any other tips that you have for, as the fight's just starting with you and Mike, what you do to kind of pull out of it?
Well, for one, whenever that episode, me slamming the cabinets and overreacting, it just helps me become more aware of, like, that's silly. You know, like I don't need to react that way. It's not appropriate. It's not going to solve anything. And so now kind of, I guess the way we solve anything is just taking a deep breath and like really figuring out where is that emotion coming from and like why am I getting upset? So yeah.
I like one, I heard you say the deep breath. I like to say it's free and it's always with you. You know, we act like, you know, our cell phones are the things that are always with us, but a deep breath you can always take. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and you'll never leave home without it.
And if one doesn't work, take 3.
Yeah, or 8. Yeah, absolutely. Take a deep breath. And the other piece that you said is really great is where is this upset coming from? Because the reality is they say that at least 90% of the time when you're upset, it's not about what you think you're upset about. It's because it reminds you of something from your childhood. And it's familiar. You know, like one of my young wounds is not being stood up for. And I'll just share a brief, embarrassing story. But my, you know, I was in first grade, and I was living about a block away from my school. And I'm not a morning person. And I jumped up. It was time to go to school, and I needed to be there like in 10 minutes. And I jumped up. It was a private school, and I had a uniform to put on, and so I threw my uniform on, my little plaid skirt, and I ran to school, and I got there and realized I wasn't wearing any underwear. And my sister was wearing the plaid pants those days, you know, that day. And so I asked her, I said, hey, give me your underwear. You got pants on. She's like, I'm not giving you my underwear. And the kids found out that I didn't have my underwear on, and I was teased and made fun of. And so I have this trigger about being stood up for. I'm always looking for. So it's important for me to realize that if I'm not feeling stood up for, you know, someone might say something, and I'm looking to Raj, like, why aren't you sticking up for me? But that's actually not about Raj not sticking up for me. It's about my upset, about my history. So if you're really upset, you know, yes, there might be a trigger, but there's 90% of the time there's something previously of your own to own, and see what there is for you to do to heal it. Again, another motivation to stay out of the ping pong.
Yeah, there's a saying in landmark education, some of you may have heard of that they're not responding to you. And generally, when someone's upset, they're responding to something from when they're much younger that they still have unresolved emotionally.
In fact, once I sat down and I wrote a bunch of young conversations, like what would 4 to 7-year-olds say? You know, you're not the boss of me. Oh gosh, what are some of them? You're not the boss of me. Gosh, why am I blanking all the young conversations of the 4-year-old?
Don't tell me what to do.
Don't tell me what to do.
You can't make me.
You can't make me. That's a good one.
I'm not your friend anymore. You're invited to my birthday.
Yeah, that's my favorite. You're not my friend, and you're not coming to my birthday party. That's the withholding, right? Your partner says something, and you're like, even if your birthday is like 9 months from now, you're like, you're not coming to my birthday party.
Yeah.
We're all a bunch of 4-year-olds deep down inside.
Yeah, we call that kind of turning up the volume. Is that in as it starts?
And that is in as it starts. You can, turning up the volume. If you're acting like a 4-year-old and you're trying to be an adult, you know, go ahead and be the 4-year-old. Should we tell them that story about our wedding?
Sure.
So the biggest fight, we're not planning which story it is. Sure. So in planning our wedding, you know, weddings can be stressful. There's expense and time and family dramas. And the biggest argument that we had was who his groomsmen were going to be.
Yeah.
And of course, he had a very valid point.
Like, I should be able to choose who my groomsmen is. Don't tell me who I should have as my groomsmen.
Right? A man should be able to choose his groomsmen.
Yeah.
But he was doing it all wrong. He was choosing men I had never met and we were never going to see again. And I did not want to be looking at our wedding photo 20 years from now, and I was committed to being married a long time, and say, who is that guy again? What was his name? We have a lot of great friends. It's like, let's not get into friends. Let's just have it be family, because no matter what happens with family, they're going to be around in the next 20 years. And so we were fighting and upset, and there was yelling, and he's like, look, I've got to work right now, and we worked at home, so he went downstairs to his office, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm really pissed off right now, but what if I tried on being playful? And I went down to his office, and I threw the door open, and I slid onto the floor, and I started kicking and screaming and saying, I want it my way, my way, my way. We both started laughing.
Yeah, I was totally
and then I got my way.
And ultimately, she was right. So what can I say?
What can I say? I tell him 98% of the time I'm right. So if you just do what I say, the odds are in your favor. It's going to work out all right. But sometimes that's not the logic he wants. He's also right 98% of the time. I don't know how that math works out.
We all feel the same way.
What's that, Mike?
We all feel the same way. We all feel like we're right most of the time, I think.
That's true. Yeah, sometimes, generally what I've found, though, is that if you have a good partner, if you've chosen wisely, as we like to say, that often the woman can see things that we just can't see, and we think we're right, but actually they're right.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, of course. But when you're really dug in and fighting for your point of view, it's always a good thing to actually look at their point of view and take it on.
We like to say both is better than one. So if you actually somehow manage to combine both perspectives, that it can probably lead to a better perspective than either one of you would have come up with if you had your way and you got to be right. And the reality is if you are focused on being right, you're not going to be very close. One of our wedding vows is I promise to care about your experience and happiness even when it conflicts with my own. Because it doesn't matter that I'm right, I have to care about Raj's experience and happiness. I don't have to, I want to. If I'm going to have a good marriage, an awesome marriage, wonderful marriage, then it's important to make sure that his perspective is valued, even if it's insane or off the wall or he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's important.
I just want to say something to our audience, that our Google Hangout link is live now. We're going to talk a little bit more about the content, but if you go to our live show page and you click on the Join the Hangout button, we're live on the show, and you can jump in and ask questions and even show up in the live feed here. If it's not working, just try refreshing the page, okay, and that might update the link.
Now, before we go to taking any questions from anyone, I just want to ask Ashley and Mike, so a fight is starting, it's brewing, maybe you have a repeat fight, maybe it's an out-of-the-blue one for an unusual circumstance. How do you two, you said, Mike, do the counterintuitive, but what else do you do to unhook from that, downward spiral that's about to start?
I'm probably the I'm not probably, I am the hothead. I'm the one that kind of gets a little emotional and wants to have those outbursts and go crazy and yell at weird things. But I guess for me, whenever he might do something that's irritating me or is upsetting me, I just, like I said, try to take a deep breath and just kind of really focus on what's really bothering me. And a lot of times it's not even what he's doing. Or if it is something he might be doing, I just say, hey, when you're doing this, it makes me feel, uncomfortable, or, kind of not, that you don't really care about my space, or, I just try to let him know how I'm feeling. And then a lot of times he's like, oh, I had no idea I was doing that. I'm sorry. And then let's try to figure out how I can not do that. So
yeah, we often expect our partners to read our minds or know how we're feeling, or to be just like us. One of our relationship heroes, Harville Hendricks, and his wife Helen Hunt, they wrote this awesome book, Getting the Love You Want, and we mentioned the Imago dialogue earlier. That's from them. And the first thing they say in their book, that's the most important thing, is called differentiation. And it's the idea that you are not your partner and your partner is not you. You think differently, different things are important to you. It might be even paradoxical what's important to you. But it's critical that you get that they're different and they can't read your mind, and it's just critical that you communicate.
Yeah, speaking of reading minds, I tend to, she says she's a hothead, but the reason I'm not is because I tend to take all my emotions and not express them. And that ends up being a problem as well, is because if I do that, then I end up becoming very frustrated with the relationship in general. And I start thinking this isn't working. And then I've had a realization over time is I just need to be able to express my feelings. And so kind of making sure that I have time to express feelings really ensures that I'm not kind of putting the, I guess, relationship at risk. It's like, yeah, it's not easy for me to share these feelings. I need to ask you to help me not judge these feelings. And so, like, I try to set aside time, especially when I start feeling like the relationship is not going the way I want it to go, and I start feeling like I'll create tension for no reason. Like, I feel like I'm like sabotaging the relationship. I'm like, why am I creating all this dissonance? I go, oh, it's because I'm not getting to express my feelings, and the only person keeping me from expressing my feelings is me. So I have to sit Ashley down and be like, okay, I need to express my feelings. I don't want to create a story around it. I just want to tell you exactly what I'm feeling, maybe why I'm feeling it, but please help me like celebrate these feelings and not judge them. And that's been like massively beneficial and kind of like where I don't ever start fights, but I will start becoming distant. And when most people would become engaged, I disengage, and then that's when she starts getting upset with me. So she's the one that will kind of like, it's most obvious that something is wrong with her, but with me, like I started to realize I'm usually, if she's getting hot about something, it might have been initiated on my own end by just not sharing my feelings and emotions like I should be.
Right. Yeah. Two things about that I want to mention, Mike. One is you're so right that if you're not sharing what's going on for you, that the other person is likely to react to who you're being. I think I was talking with Amber and Nathan, and they were just pointing out that like we actually source how people are being around us, and if you're being distant, then your partner is going to actually react to your being distant, and you're like, why are they acting that way? You're not saying something that's there on your mind, and they can totally sense that, right? You can be driving them crazy. The other thing that you mentioned that's really great is that there's sort of an on-ramp to a conversation, and you said, okay, I want to talk to you about something, and I want you to be able to hear my feelings, and I'm going to tell you my feelings. Is that okay? And it really helps them be like, okay, great, I'm going to provide that for you. Whereas if you just launch into what it is you're going to say, you haven't kind of created the space for them to listen.
And they may think, you're blaming them, and they're going to go into defensiveness, just like we were talking about earlier. But you're kind of setting the stage. You're setting them up well. You say, look, just give me 10 minutes. I just want to talk this out. I'm not quite sure of my feelings even or where this is going, and this isn't about you. But can you just give me 10 minutes and let me talk this out and just really listen so I feel heard? So, again, applying some business perspective, you're kind of front-loading the conversation. Yeah. We do like to take business practices and apply them to relationship, and even relationship practices and apply them to business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to welcome Megan to the call. We saw you pop up on the screen here for a moment, so welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay, do we want to shift into Great Minds Think Alike?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
And just to represent what we're talking about here, just to make sure that you're all tracking how we're doing our content, I'm going to flash our little kind of graphic here. We're talking about Fights Clean as it starts, and there's sort of a tipping point before you get into the fight, which is the during part, and it can either go one way or it can go the other way. And using some skill in the as it's starting phase allows you to kind of ramp it back down and not get into a full-blown argument. And if you get really ninja skilled at the as it starts distinctions, you'll find yourself in arguments that kind of disrupt the joy and the peace, as we like to say, your P3 relationship, your playful, peaceful, passionate relationship. You can really navigate yourself out of kind of getting down and have, ruining your day or your weekend or whatever, and you can pull yourself back up into that playful, peaceful, passionate space.
Yeah, so we call this one Great Minds Think Alike, because one of our, I'm going to hit stop share screen. one of our repeat arguments, we like to name our repeat arguments and notice what the patterns are, so it's not like you're hooked in that argument, but you're actually in a pattern. And so I may ask Raj, you know, hey, are you going to do whatever it is, X, Y, and Z, that I've asked him to do 15 times? And he's like, I was just about to do it. And I'd snap back at him, well, how am I supposed to know you're just about to do it? You haven't done it yet. You know, and then it just is not going well. It just escalates. So we created a practice so that if I tell him, ask him to do something and he was just about to do it, rather than getting mad at me, he'll turn and he'll smile and he'll say, great minds think alike. So that we know we're on the same page. He was just about to do it. And in fact, we've even evolved it now that sometimes he'll look at me and he'll smile and he'll say, I've got this. Which, men, just letting you know, those are the 3 most magical words you could ever say to your woman. I've got this. It's like most women, you know, we have to be super women these days. We're supposed to do all the feminine things that we used to do, and now we need to be men as well and succeed and be task-oriented. And we're just desperate to feel supported and held and that we can let go of it all. So when your man says, I've got this, I mean, literally, once Raj said it to me, we were dancing at Burning Man, and he just out of the blue said it, and I literally fell like a rag doll into his arms and just started bawling. Because all my life I've wanted to be this strong, independent woman, but deep down I just wanted my man to have me. But I don't have to be strong. He's got me. And so Great Minds Think Alike evolved into even, I've got this. Do you want to say something? I want to ask them if that occurs for them.
Just that dynamic of, you know, your partner wanting to do something, you're just about to do it, and they tell you to do it or ask you to do it. Like, it happens all the time, and a lot of the distinctions we work on are things that happen all the time and how not to make them turn into problems. And so it's just awesome that you can just say to your partner, great minds think alike, rather than being like, why are you asking me that? I'm just about to do it. Stop being such a control freak or whatever, you know. Whatever goes on in your mind around it, right?
Leave me alone. Get off my back.
Get off my back. That's what this tool
It's never good enough.
Awesome.
All those usual things. You guys ever have that dynamic at all?
I think so. I mean, not as much. Probably more in the beginning, but we don't as much anymore. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think the I've got this. That's insightful for me. I was sitting there going, I could probably be a little more reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
I think I tend to keep my ideas in my head, and I'm like, I know exactly what we're doing.
Right.
I'm not good at communicating what it is, the plan, to the outside world, including my wife.
It's true.
So, I could probably be better, but I'm sitting there going, that's probably all I have to say. I don't even have to, tell the whole plan in detail. I'd probably just need to say,
I got this.
Got this.
It's almost even better that you don't. You could start telling all the details, and she's like, okay, oh gosh, that's a lot to think about. You're like, I've got it. You don't have to worry.
Awesome. I just want to anything else you want to say about that before we open it up to some questions and some sharing? Mike, I just saw Michael Coleman jumped on. Welcome, Mike. Anything, Mike or Ashley, you want to say more about Great Minds Think Alike?
I think we're fine. We're ready.
Good. All right. Megan, did you have a question for us?
You got to unmute her. Megan, you're muted. If you want to unmute yourself.
Hi.
There you go.
There we go. Great. Hi, Megan.
Well, actually, I'm so overwhelmed with it that I don't even have questions yet. I'm just fitting myself into all the situations and seeing myself in a lot of them and taking in the distinctions and just making connections with them. You know, you talked about differentiation, and I teach kids, and that's what it's all about. It's the main thing. It's every child is different, and how do you make teaching different for each child? And I don't know how along the way we forget. Well, not that we forget it, but right, as adults, it's exactly the same thing. We're all different, and I just see myself in a lot of that. I'm the hot one. I'm the one in a discussion that goes insane and will, be fun, shouting like a crazy maniac, and my husband's the calm one, and he's always the one So yeah, I'm just excited and happy to be here and listening to everything.
Yeah, we've got a few female hotheads on the phone on the call tonight, including myself. There's a teacher named Osho who used to say, "Women are crazy and men are stupid." And of course, it's a huge generalization, but as women, we can get emotional and wild, and of course, men can do that too. And men are often like, "I don't understand. What's wrong?" And the woman's like, "What do you mean you don't understand? It's obvious why I'm upset."
Yeah, and if, Megan, if you can gently remind your partner of, like, even referring to the kids that you work with, like, hey, we're so different, and if we just take a little space to understand our differences and embrace that and get each other's perspectives. There's a really neat tool, we'll probably talk about it in depth at some point, that our friends Amber and Nathan, who were on show number 2, taught us, and it's called a consideration.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a really good one.
Where you actually take on the other person's point of view, so much so that you believe in it and you're trying to convince them that they should take on that point of view.
And just to say, you might say, well, how can I possibly do that? I completely disagree with them. So you pick an issue that you're really at odds. Like when we did this we were in their workshop called Discipline of Love. And the example that a couple did was, it was a couple from Australia, and one wanted to live in Melbourne and one wanted to live in Sydney. And so what they did is they said, okay, whatever our conclusion is of how we want it to be, you can take that back soon, but for now, let's just set your conclusion aside and actually argue for your partner's stance. And it goes back to that imago dialogue of just really getting your partner's perspective and being heard. And there's something magical about them seeing you argue for their perspective, that even if an hour later you say, okay, I'm going back to my other perspective, they just feel so much more held and seen and appreciated, and like you get it. We might disagree, but you get them.
And I think what Raj says about practicing is fundamental, because in theory, my intention isn't to sometimes talk or blow up, but when I open my mouth, that's what happens. It's like, okay, I need more practice there. And I know I'm doing it. I know it's stupid. I know I sound like a 4-year-old or whatever, but it's like, okay, I need more practice there.
We have this really neat distinction, Megan, called the do-over. And like you said, it takes practice, and sometimes we beat ourselves up because we didn't get it right the first time. So, if I, either get upset with Gabby or I try to communicate something in a certain way, and in my head I know that I could have done it better, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have done it better. Instead of just thinking to yourself, I could have done it better, you can go, can I get a do-over, please? And you're asking, like, hey, I know that didn't come out right. Can I say it again? And it's a really powerful tool to practice in the moment instead of waiting for the next time when you're triggered. Because usually when you're triggered, it doesn't come out right. But after it comes out wrong, you can go, can I get a do-over? And that in of itself, your partner's like, yes.
And let me add in the new piece that we added. And I don't know how old you are, those that are participating today, but I'm 44, Raj is 48, and in the mid-'80s, there was the LL Cool J song where he sings, I'm gonna knock you out, Mama said knock you out. And about a month ago we were cooking in the kitchen and I said something to Raj that was, it wasn't terrible, but it was one of those kind of like subtle, almost not so subtle digs, and I just heard it come out and I was like, I don't want to talk to him that way, and we really try not to have our partners have to call us out on us doing something that's not great, but to call ourselves out. So I said, I'm going to call me out. Gabby's going to call me out. And then
I started laughing, and I told her, that's great. I actually was wondering, that didn't come out right, and I was wondering if you'd catch it.
Yeah, so he was biting his tongue. He didn't like how I said it either, but he wasn't going to start a fight by saying, I don't appreciate your tone or what you said. And instead, I called myself out on it and brought in humor. We love playful, peaceful, passionate relationship. We always talk about a P3 relationship and really bring that in. I'm going to call me out, and I'm going to get a do-over because I didn't like what I just did.
Yeah, great too.
I actually have another do-over, and I want to ask Mike and Ashley, if you have any do-over examples or any other tips you want to share. I was going to do the hot and bothered backseat driver as far as the do-over. It was my favorite do-over.
Okay.
Yeah?
One second, let's just check in with Megan. Megan, do you have any other follow-up question about what you raised? Sorry?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah.
Thanks, Megan. So yeah, one of our more popular distinctions or tools that we share with couples is called the hot and bothered backseat driver. And it's a great example of a do-over, and as a fight starts, how to unhook from it. So maybe as a couple driving, you've had an argument. Either your partner's driving too fast or too close. In Roger's case, you guys are laughing.
Most every couple that we talk about, they like, this is one of the hot points.
Yeah, there's that laughter of recognition.
Yeah, totally. In fact, they're like,
yep, we have that one. Please tell us. Yep. And the worst, of course, is like, you know, you're on your way to a dinner party, or maybe you're even on your way to go see your parents, and you like, you know, over driving, you get into a fight, and by the time you get there, you're like, either I'm not going in, or you know, you're in and you're like pretending to not be in a fight, and you're in a fight. And so one day, Raj and I were driving, and his issue is he's a big thinker, he's a visionary, you know, so he's always like daydreaming of what's next and what if and what would it look like. And so we're driving on the freeway going somewhere, and I tell him our exit's in a mile. He's like, great, thanks. And he's all the way. I
totally got it. I think it's like, okay, in a mile. I can handle that.
No problem. Yeah, I'll get over in a mile. I could do that. But then the exit, I look down at my phone and I look up, and we're either about to miss the exit, or I'll look up and I'm like, you're about to miss the exit. And it'll go, and like go over 3 lanes to catch the exit. I'm stressed, and oh my God, you're going to kill us, or whatever. And so one day this was happening, and I was like, Raj, you're going to miss the exit. And I was pissed. And he just turned to me and he smiled and he gently said, can I get a do-over? Would you mind trying that differently? And there was something disarming about how he asked. I was nasty to him. I will admit it. I was totally nasty.
I was just kind of like, I'm done with this dynamic of the car argument. You know?
And so he put on his Teflon suit. He did not get hooked and like jump in and, you know, meet me where I was at. And he said, can I get a do-over? Will you say that, you know, another way? And I thought, okay, he's being really great with how he's asking me this, so I'm gonna meet him there. I'm gonna be great too. And I thought, all right, I'm really bothered right now. I'm really bothered. But what if I was hot and bothered instead? And so I said, oh, Raj, I want this exit, Raj. Take this one now. Yes, this. And we have never, ever had an argument. So if he's driving too fast, I'm like, baby, slow it down. Take it slow, baby.
Yeah, it's only if I'm going to, like, run someone over does she, like, have to just jump right into
Only if he's going to hit another human being will I jump in and yell or something. Although he never has. I have to give him that. He's never had an accident, and I have. So. But that's a perfect example of like it's starting to escalate, and how can we find a way to shift out of it and not just avoid the argument, but actually cause more intimacy and fun. In fact, I often joke, and I'm not, this it's a joke, but it's actually literal. I got a rise out of him, so to speak. It's bad. I got him turned on.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to pay attention, you know.
Ashley and Mike, you were laughing a bit. Do you have the driving piece sometimes?
Yeah, I think I drive aggressive a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't have a history of accidents either. But yeah, sometimes she speaks up and then she apologizes afterwards. But the way it has gone lately is she'll be like, oh, we're gonna miss a turn, or we're gonna, oh my gosh, or stop, or she'll scream something, and then I'll react. I'll try not to overreact, and then she'll be like, and then she'll catch herself. She'll go, oh my God, I'm sorry, sorry for being a backseat driver. And I go, that's cool, thank you. I needed to, you know, I probably was going too fast, or I just kind of like recognize like you because her feelings are valid. You know, if she felt like there was some sort of threat or something like that, and she was just being vocal, and I realized that in the moment it's hard for her to like turn that off. And so for her, I was like, it's a split second type thing for her. She's like, I need to speak up right now. So I go, oh, you know, thanks for mentioning that. It's almost like the moment that I say thank you for speaking up is like she chills out for the rest of the car ride. So it's like it creates an enormous amount of calm for her for the rest of the ride. She's like, oh, he saw it coming too. He thanked me for this. I can relax now.
He's in control, so he's got it.
Yeah, how is that for you, Ashley? How is that for you, Ashley, when he does that?
It's very nice. It shows me that he appreciates my my feeling, my worry, and then it makes me feel like, okay, he's in control, and that makes me feel safe, so I'm okay. You know.
And you mentioned that word safe. You know, for many women, that's just such a fundamental. There's so many dangers in life, and you know, we're in this craving. That's what I've Got You is about, right? Wanting to hear that is feeling safe and taken care of. And especially in the car, especially if you're not driving, there can really trigger some not feeling safe. You know, especially maybe you're an independent, you know, in control woman used to being in control, and you're not. And not just for driving, but it also builds trust if you can say to your partner, I'm not feeling safe, and they say, oh, okay, I actually want you to feel safe. What can I do to have you feel safe? So you take the experience of being in a car, and then it translates in your relationship that you can tell your partner, maybe even translates into the keeping the sex dirty portion that we talk about. You know, hey, I'm not feeling safe, and if you can create that feeling of safety, you know, when we talk about sex, you know, we often talk about how a woman wants to surrender, but surrender is absolutely impossible without a sense of safety. So even building safety in the car while you're driving is a way of, you know, leading to an even more awesome sex life.
Yeah. I just want to take a moment and show some of our awesome articles, including the Hot and Bothered Backseat Driver, at our website.
Click on that one because I love the photo on that one.
Yeah, so you can see we have different blog categories here. So this one is under Fights Clean, and you know, we had a nip nagging in the bud. It's an awesome article. So Hot and Bothered Backseat Driver. And with each article, in addition to the content, there's at the bottom some actions that you can take to actually learn how to implement the tool.
So you look at this picture here. We've all been there, right? Looking out the window. I'm not even going to look at you. But I love this shot. You know, when you think of the backseat driver, it's normally like this, you know, not this pretty picture, but how's that for a backseat driver, right?
Yeah. Some of the action options here. Next time you notice yourself in a bothered backseat driver communication, stop yourself and take a moment to shift out of being bothered into being hot and bothered. Get your sexy on and communicate what you were bothered about in a sexy, sultry way, and get into it, right? And each time the bothered backseat driver communication comes out of your mouth,
Repeat steps 1 through 3. Wait, don't change from there yet, honey. I just want to point this out that, you know, we call these the action option and a little mission impossible. Dun, 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 dun. We say your action option should you choose to accept it, because, you know, it's really true that it is all optional. And most couples just measure their success of their relationship on how long they've been together, and they're not really taking action to improve their relationship. But, you know, you guys are here on the call. You are taking action to have it be better. So just always, in everything that we do, whether it's our ebook or our courses or even every blog, we're always putting in an action option because the action is so critical. I like to say a little bit of intention, attention, and action goes a long way. But we actually were talking to a couple tonight. They were really upset that there was all this intention and no action. So it's important to follow up every idea with how can I use and adapt this? How can I apply this? What action can I take now that's going to make a difference?
Yeah, and just practice. You know, you're going to maybe mess up, but it's better than being in an argument for a whole afternoon. I wanted to just give a quick shout out to my good friend Mike Coleman, who I saw show up on the show. We went to college together, and I don't know if Mike wants to share anything here, but really good to see you on the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Mike. He's on chat here, so we can't see him or hear him, but we see him there, and he is. What's he been a friend for 30 years now?
A long time.
Yeah, he looks good for 48, doesn't this guy? Great, and if you have any other questions, whether it be by video, if you don't want to be on video, you can send it in by chat. Go ahead and put them in there. Yafat or Sarah or Jesse or anyone else who's on the call, feel free. Of course, we have lots of great ideas, but we always want to hear from you. In the meantime, Ashley and Mike, which, by the way, on your picture, I took this off of Facebook, but I love that picture of the two of you. I don't know what that was from, but I love, Ashley, how you're looking up at him with such love.
Yeah, our good friend Lisa Mack, she took that picture for us. That was our Christmas card, so
Awesome, awesome. Mike, I think I just heard your voice. No? Okay. I see someone says I got one. I don't know.
Who's got one? Is that you, Yafat? Go for it, Yafat.
That is me. That is me. Hi, guys. Hi. So you mentioned that sometimes relationships, couple relationship is exactly like work relationships. So sometimes you can bring stuff back and forth. So this question is about work, but I guess it can also be about partnership. So Gabby, how you just said, sometimes I ask him to do something and he's just about to do it. So there's a joke in Hebrew where
I hope he's just about to do it, but he's not just about to do it. It doesn't look like he's about to do it.
You can pretend you're just about to do it.
There's a question that, when a woman, no, there's a joke in Hebrew where a woman asks a guy to do something, he'll do it. She doesn't have to remind him every 6 months. So the question is, how do you not become someone who nags all the time, especially with someone who's like, I got it, and 30 years later, it's still, the faucet's still dripping.
I'm glad you asked that. We actually just wrote a blog article a week or two ago called Nip Nagging in the Bud. So Raj, already referenced the blog page, and you can go ahead and check that out. But I'll give a few summaries and tips here. And interestingly enough, this is exactly, there's a couple that was with us this weekend. I won't say who, but they're powerful, amazing, extraordinary couple. But this is a huge issue that, she asks him to do something or he agrees to do something. He's not even asking, but agrees, and he doesn't do it. So what do? It's very painful because for a woman, and men, you need to know this, it's not about the thing that you're doing. It actually has us feel unsafe and that we can't trust you. It has nothing to do with you said you were going to do this and you didn't do, whatever the thing was. You were going to fix that thing that's broken or whatever it may be. It's that, wow, I can't trust that what you say is what you're going to do. So you might say, I will be faithful. I can't trust that. Or I will always be there for you. Or I will take care of you when you're ill. And so in some ways, women are testing their partners to see, are you going to be who you say you're going to be?
Yeah, and it starts with, you're going to take out the trash, and then you don't do it.
And joke, I often say, Raj and I don't even have kids yet, but we're trying to get pregnant. And, Raj, he does I usually cook, and he does the dishes. And sometimes if the dishes aren't clean enough and there's still food on the dishes after they're washed, I joke and I'll say, you're going to kill the baby. Because I don't, it's not about the dishes being dirty. I have it mean that he's not going to be paying attention, the baby bottle's going to be dirty, and he's going to feed the baby old, spoiled milk, and the baby's going to die.
It's true.
Like I said, yeah. Women are crazy, right? And so we wrote this about nip nagging in the bud, and a while ago we were at an event, and there were about 40 people there, and we spoke about this topic, and Raj said, gentlemen, I've got a breakthrough for you in about your partner nagging. And they were all like, yes, awesome, great, a tip. And Raj said, you're not going to like it. Don't get too excited. It's about being your word. And when you've been nagging or your partner's been nagging you, whether it's male or female, you want to look and just ask, did I agree to do something that I haven't done? Because most people are upset, that their partner's asking them to do something, but if they've said that they would do it and they haven't done it, then it's really about, your integrity is out. It's broken. You think of a spoke of a wheel, you say you're going to do something, that spoke is there, you don't do it, that spoke is broken, and then the bicycle wheel just doesn't go around.
And then usually, you know, men explode, right? Because it gets to a point where it's kind of like, okay, now I feel lousy because you're telling me, I mean, you know, your actions, your behavior, everything shows that I'm not a man of my word, and I like to be a man of my word, and I explode. What's that?
Right? I'm not good enough. And really, the reality is every human being, male or female, has some flavor of I'm not good enough. So when your partner is saying, you didn't do this and you said you were going to do it, all they're hearing is, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And so the first thing, what I was talking to someone, as I said, I know we're going to wrap up here in a second, see the time, but I said to this woman tonight, what I did with Raj is I asked him, if you don't do what you said you're going to do, what would you like me to say or do, and by when? So instead of me having a reaction, I've asked him in advance, you tell me what I should do. If you don't do what you said you would do, what would you like me to do to remind you about that? And it puts them on them, and now I'm speaking their language, it might be their words, and I'm getting into their world and putting it in their lap and speaking into what they need rather than just me expressing upset.
Yeah, and from the guy's perspective, if you look at nagging as like, what did I say that I was gonna do that I didn't do, and really own that. It's not always the case to read our article, but quite often it's the case that you said you're gonna do something you didn't, and then your partner nags you about it. They're actually holding you to your word, so you can look at it as an access to you upgrading honoring your word, which is a super powerful thing.
Yeah, I've actually gotten in the habit of if Ashley is asking me to do something and I know that I probably won't get to it, or if I think there's a chance it won't happen, I can't promise.
Yeah.
I can't promise that I'm going to do that. I can make an effort, and she's like, I want you to promise. She'll like try to push the issue, and I'll go, no, I cannot promise you that.
That's awesome.
It takes a lot.
Yeah. I like it's one of those things. I think I started doing it without realizing the root of what you're talking about, and that is like I don't want to break a commitment. I want my word to be my word, so I don't commit to things that I just can't do. So
well, you're really bringing that integrity and honoring your word as you give it. You're not just going to say yes, dear, sure, dear, okay, whatever you say. And then, knowing that you're causing an upset for later on.
Yeah, we actually think we're going to make them happy by saying we're going to do it and not really meaning it. In fact, it makes it way worse than doing what you just said.
You're just delaying the circumstance or the upset.
Yeah. I remember saying even like, she'll say, you said you were going to do that. I was like, I know specifically that I did not. I know exactly how I phrased that.
One tip that you can use you can write it down.
Yeah, I heard it the way I wanted to hear it a lot of times. But even I think there's an instance for an example, my desk here at home gets used for a podcast that they do for Barbell Business, and so I have my desk set up for my paperwork and my laptop and all my stuff. It's organized how I want it, right? And then they come in and they do their podcast, and they need to use my desk, so they move all my stuff, and they put their podcast gear up, and they podcast, and then they're done, and the podcast gear is still there. And I'm like, hey, Mom, can you put up the podcast gear? Mike, will you put up your podcast gear? I don't want to ruin it.
I never agreed to remove my stuff. Well, that's actually a good point, because there's agreements and then there's unspoken agreements. And so an unspoken agreement might be, if you use the space, clean it up afterwards, right? You didn't have to agree to it, but it's kind of an unspoken agreement and honoring that.
Right. Well,
I've been putting it away lately.
Yes. And actually, one of the things that I did was I was like, can I ask your permission to share to tell you how that makes me feel, asking for permission to share. That way it makes me feel like I'm not causing an argument. And so I just shared it. I feel like you don't honor my space when you leave your equipment out. And the next time they podcast, it was gone. And then I recognized it, and I appreciated it, and I told them thank you, and it's been gone ever since. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing what happens when you can communicate and share and get the other person. Fantastic.
And you mentioned, I know we're just at 5 minutes over, so we're going to wrap up now. But Ashley and Mike, it's just, we could talk forever. It's so fun. You guys are such a fun couple to be around. I so appreciate you being here. You mentioned your podcast, so just a little plug with Barbell Shrug. I think I heard, Mike, that you have something like 80,000 people a week download your podcast. So.
What's that?
Well, bravo! And one thing I really appreciate about your show, I just appreciate that you not only talk about fitness, but being fit is more than the body. It's the mind. It's the heart. It's a whole well-rounded. Health and well-being is a well-rounded element. So I'm excited that you guys are getting excited about starting to speak about relationship, and we're really grateful and delighted that we got to do that with you here tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on the show tonight. And à bientôt. Bonsoir.
And bonsoir here from France. But also next week we'll be talking about how to keep the sex dirty as it starts. So we'll be getting into seduction and creating that environment. And because as we say, a P3 relationship is what we're aiming here for: a playful, peaceful, passionate relationship.
Yeah, next Friday we'll have Alex Allman.
Alex Allman, yeah, is the only one from this series that won't be a couple, but he is just a very successful expert on relationships, specifically working with men. And actually, I'm going to be on a plane back from France, so it will be Raj and Alex, the guys, leading the call next week. So looking forward to having you there for that.
Great, and remember you can watch any of our replays at our Relationship Fun and Games website. Just look for the Fights Clean Sex Dirty TV link and look for the episode library. We look forward to seeing you next week, and thank you so much for joining us today.
We hope you have a playful, peaceful, passionate relationship, because wonderful is worth it.
See you, everybody.
Thanks everybody.
Again, Mike and Ashley.
Bye.